Hi, I'm Pam Wining with Axe Media Group, and I'm here with a good friend of mine, Elizabeth Obrey, and lives in Springfield, and she is a wealth of knowledge about education and autism. Now, Elizabeth comes to us as a mother of 5 children. She is an author of several books. A couple of them are Stars in Her Eyes and TikTok Autism Clock. She is a trainer for Stars for Autism, and she currently works as a family advocate for the Arc of the Ozarks. So, Elizabeth, can you tell us all about yourself a little bit?
So I spend a lot of my time working directly with families. So I have a wonderful opportunity to work um, daily with a myriad of people, as well as my own family. I work as receiving phone calls from people out in the community to guide them to resources and help them understand a lot about autism. My work with STARS is focused on autism and training. So looking at how do we train individuals, communities, and businesses to understand what autism is and how to move forward in our community with inclusion. But my heart is in my home. My home is my family. I have 5 children. 3 have received the diagnosis of autism. So I have gone from being a young mother to now being a mother of older children and teenagers, and have been through a lot of different experiences with them.
Um, we talked the other day about you had your first child, and I can kind of relate to this that sometimes when your child doesn't hit that certain mark or doesn't do certain things, you get a little nervous. And you said you had some of those feelings with your first child.
Yes, yes. Early on, when my first child was born, I thought, man, this is so hard. I can't believe anybody has more than one child. I thought, what am I doing wrong? There were 5 siblings. I grew up being a babysitter, tending to younger siblings. I thought something's wrong with me. I can't understand why people have more children, because it was really, really hard. As that child grew, a neighbor approached me and said she recognizes some red flags and said, might want to consider looking into autism. Her child had autism, and I thought, well, I can do this. So I made and broke appointments for 9 months. I'd make an appointment, she'd say a word, I'd cancel all the appointments. Then we'd go another few weeks without any words and lots of behaviors. And it was a hard time because my daughter really didn't look at me as her mother. I thought, I'm her caretaker. She gets that I feed her and provide her with things, but she's not understanding that relationship between us. So
That's hard.
So it was hard. And then when we went into that first, I had to take a baby step to really get into looking. I didn't go, let's full diagnosis. So we went with parents as teachers. I went to just their typical preschool screening. It was it turned into a wonderful experience. But I remember sitting there, and the woman next to me was sobbing, and she was telling me how her daughter knew what a banana was, and she knew what fruit was, but she didn't know that a banana was a fruit. And I remember thinking, oh, I'm in trouble. My sweet girl doesn't even know I'm her mom. But they were very gracious and worked wonderfully with me and helped us get to that diagnosis.
That's a wonderful organization. It's really not that old of an organization, and it so helps parents kind of see what they can do to help their child, and it also helps the people who assist them to help them maybe guide them and watch for this or work on this. And I can't say enough about that organization. So you went from parents as teachers, and did you get a diagnosis then, or what did they suggest?
We worked with them she came for a handful of visits, and our parent educator finally just said, I've taken you as far as I can take you. It's time. So she held my hand, and we started making appointments, and were able to get in for a full diagnosis. And so by the age of 2 years and 3 months, my daughter at that point, they weren't giving official diagnosis for children under 5, but we were told that she scored and qualified in the area of autism. And so we began her early intervention program.
Oh, that is so important. I can I'm a little bit older than you. And I can remember that, a lot of children uh, didn't have a diagnosis. Parents were kind of, I don't know, this is my only child. I assume this is what it's supposed to be like. But they might have been in third, fourth grade before
Mhm.
they saw that there was something, that they may need to do. And early diagnosis is so important so that you can help with sensory issues if there are sensory issues. And so I think that's a miracle in itself that you got that help so early on.
Yeah, with that, and that's one thing that we try to do is make autism part of the conversation. That it's okay to talk to about it and about it early,
Yes.
where we're not trying to hide it or push it under the rug. And that's that community awareness and being supportive to the families around you and helping them understand that importance. But it's never too late.
No, it's never too late, but as early as you can get it, that'd be great. Were there things that you did, especially in those early years at home with your child, that helped your child? Do you remember some of the things they told you to do, or just?
Yes. Well, we really, we did get into an early intervention program
Mhm.
through First Steps, and so we moved on from First Steps and then to the early intervention program through the public schools. But we did a lot at home. We did things with visual schedules and picture charts,
Mm.
lots and lots of experiences. We went out into the community. We didn't hide away. We took our time. A lot of predictability,
Mhm.
helping understand. We did a lot of now, back then it was specifically called sensory integration. Now we just know the sensory processing disorder, and sensory processing is such a part of autism. And what an occupational therapist does, is not so separate as it was back then.
Right.
But lots of things. She loves to hear the story of how we had to teach her to get dizzy because she could spin and spin and spin because she
Right.
wasn't aware of her surroundings. So we did a lot of that. We started with sign language as well.
Uh-huh.
And that was an amazing, the frustration level in the first 10 days went down 90%.
For you and her,
For both of
Yes.
us, yes.
Absolutely. When you feel like you know something, it just makes you feel so much better that you're doing something for your child as opposed to, I don't know what to do. I need help. And you have these great organizations to kind of lean on. And
Yeah.
that's a blessing. Now, as school age, did she go to the public schools, or did you just do like a special group, or?
Well, with my first child, we did public school,
Mhm.
but we did a lot of outside therapies that
Mhm.
led us to a private school later that her brothers attended. So
Okay.
for her, she was successful in integrating and going mainstream pretty quickly. She had so many tools early. She used to tell me how, as she got older and started to understand her diagnosis, she told me, people used to watch me while I was in school. And I said, oh, yeah, they come in and check on you. She said, I thought I had magic powers and they were making sure I wasn't going to be using them.
Oh, how different people think, all of us do, kind of things like that. That's fun.
It's
That's
that,
fun.
it all goes down to perspective, what you're perceiving in your environment.
Right. Well, now that you have 5 children and you've had a lot of school experiences, one of the things that uh, students have is an IEP. And you and I talked briefly about that, and I thought had such wisdom. Would you mind sharing about the IEP and how you see it? Because some parents, that's really scary for them,
Mhm.
and they don't know what to do or how to respond, or that sort of thing.
Well, and that's very important. It's really about team building. It's building that team to work together for goals for your child. When you're in that setting, that school setting, it's really important to realize that you're on the same team as the teachers, the therapists, anybody that comes in contact
Mhm.
with your child, that you're in this competition and you're competing against the odds. The
Mhm.
odds of, will my child be sitting on the couch after graduation? Will
Right.
they find employment? Will they have to face anxiety and depression? So we're on one side
Mhm.
of this competition and we're working together. And by using the IEP process, that's that individualized education plan or program that is set up that you can work with with the school. Now there are a lot of pieces that you will, as you are in the school system, and lots of great resources from rights law to the Parents Act, and Impact is the one in the state of Missouri. But we do have a book with stars for autism, and not just stars, but a lot of different authors from around the globe, actually, that we've put
That's
together.
Autism, what schools are missing. Okay.
So, and it's really about how do we work together. And this, my section is on that IEP.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wanted parents to look at that IEP, not just as that individualized education plan, but that IEP stands for so many things. And so what I share with families is IEP also means I'm exceptionally proud of my student.
Mm-hmm.
I'm exceptionally prepared. So learning about and understanding what your child's rights are so that you can be the best advocate for your student.
That's
And
good.
sometimes, being able to bring up those conversations that a parent has to bring up first for that to be included. I'm expressing my priorities. Your priorities versus the school priorities, they need to be discussed. And for that those long range goals, I expect progress. If you're not seeing progress in your child's schooling, then looking at what can we do? We need to recheck those goals quarterly. And if they're not making progress, do we need to change them? Do we need to alter them? Are they already reaching them? And we need to increase those goals. And then I envision potential. So what is the potential? What are we looking at 10 years beyond that graduation? We want to assume and expect that there's a great potential in our child, whatever that is.
That's right. Now, normally a parent goes in, mother and dad or whomever can be there at that time, and then teachers. Now, I had a conversation with you earlier about a cook could be invited to the IEP if there's issues with how to handle the cafeteria.
Absolutely.
The bus is always a special
Mhm.
experience. We think sometimes if we have the child working well in the classroom, and then they go on the bus and it's all that noise and it just hits them and they just, they don't feel well. So we need to understand that at the IEP, sometimes a parent needs to maybe say, could I have the bus driver included in this? Could I have the cook or the janitor? The janitor, custodian, sometimes is brought in to be a person that if somebody's having some frustrating moments, they need to step outside the classroom and maybe do a little sweeping or dusting. But that usually has to have a parent's approval.
Right.
So, and that's, that's kind of what you're talking about to make sure that's all there. But you also work as an advocate. Now, how does that work in an IEP? Do you sometimes go to the IEP with the parents?
I don't personally.
Mhm.
There are those that are specialized, and that's their full-time job.
Okay.
So as a family advocate, I can lead them to that
Mhm.
education advocate. I can also lead them to resources and training to help them understand and be prepared. So
Mhm.
there are different ways, and a person can bring an advocate that is not necessarily a trained education specialist, but we've had our music therapist
Okay.
come because she's able to really work on some higher level skills that we weren't seeing in the classroom and be able to share her tips and techniques. We've had support coordinators go to help the school know what supports are available to tie in those wraparound services and how we can work together as a team. So just bringing those and bringing grandpa in,
Right.
anybody that has say in that child's life are welcome. And you as a parent can invite that. You do need to let them know ahead of time. But yet you and bring anybody that you want to advocate for your child.
I think that's great. I think parents sometimes forget that it's scary, and if you're shy, sometimes you might just feel really like you can't, you know, ask those questions. And if you can invite somebody who's a little more vocal, that you understand what they're going to say, that would be a good avenue for a shy parent or a parent who doesn't feel that, they're getting adequate results, and they don't know quite how to say that, and an advocate would do a good job.
That's very important because that's, especially if we have a family of parents that are new to the system, to, you know, and they might be, yeah, because there is a relationship and we want to really celebrate those successes. But there are times when we need to bring up when things aren't moving in the right direction or when we're having difficulties. And those conversations can be difficult when those people are friends as well as the educator, because you do build a relationship, because a lot of times your students will have many of those same educators and professionals in their life for years and years.
Right. Now, I know you've co-written several books. Would you mind kind of going through those? Because I can see that some of our audience members would like to maybe order a particular one, and they don't know quite which one that they need to order.
Okay,
Of course, I'm sure you'd be happy with all of them.
Yes. Yes. So stars in her eyes. That was our first one, and that is this is a book about kind of a good book for starter parents, for really starting out and really understanding. It would be a good book for grandparents. It is 3 professionals and 2 parents sitting around answering questions. So going through just those different questions, just as if we were sitting around a table having a discussion and giving our opinion on different topics and our experiences. And sometimes those answers don't match because we are each giving our own perspective. We didn't edit or try to push one point of view. We each were respected with having our own point of view. So that is one. And TikTok Autism Clock is kind of that getting started on your own program. That was wraparound services, how to really work with your child at home. What my favorite part of the book is in the back is just an index and glossary about all the terms that you will hear as a young parent. You know, when I first started, everybody they thought if you heard one word once that you remembered what that was. And so I would get a note card and I would write down words that I wasn't recognizing, and then I'd go home and I'd research them. So we've put all those in the book, and really, how do you get through the day and how do you look at those communication pieces and those sensory pieces? Our most current book is The Complete Guide to Becoming an Autism-Friendly Professional, which is based on the Stars for Autism training program, which we have utilized highly in the state, helping different cities become autism friendly, as well as businesses, lots of first responder training. So it's a book about how to really look at inclusion, the inclusion of autism, and how we've come from that, gone from segregation to kind of including people and making arrangements, but being fully inclusive. And a lot of that starts with just really understanding the basics of autism and understanding that there are needs and there are strengths. And once you understand autism, looking at how you can just see that person first. And once you understand what autism is, the behaviors and the reactions that you might see, the slower processing time, begin to make sense, and that just becomes part of your world as well. Being able to understand and see, well, that maybe that's what's going on, but it's okay. It's no big deal. We're going to maybe shut the sound down a little bit more because it is kind of irritating to me. And I'm seeing someone with hands over their ears. I'm going to make that, I'm going to make that adjustment in my business.
Now, that red book over there, that is your kind of staff book on training and training others. Is that right?
So when we do trainings, we do have different books available that if we have a basic generic autism friendly guide, but then we have some that are specific to different professions that we've done multiple times. So this one is like for our teachers. So when we go into schools or we work with first steps or preschools, this is the one we use. This one is one for bus drivers because we have done the bus driver training. So we have first responders and hairdressers, restaurants. So we've taken the autism training and tried to really specialize it for certain types of businesses or programs.
I think probably here in Springfield, we're pretty knowledgeable, and you've probably done a lot of training here in this area. And some of our viewers out there might be living in a small town or something like that, or maybe they haven't heard about this. and it's probably something that maybe you can help them with or give it direction or.
Yes, well, in through this complete guide, there is an online training
Okay.
available. So that is available online. But yeah, reaching out to stars, we can, if you can't find that information, go ahead and just reach out. We've got our Facebook page, and then we've got, mostly through our Facebook page would
Mm-hmm.
be the best way to access us. Just messages there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's so important to just spread this awareness. We have done some trainings for different states and help them get set up, because what we're looking at is just a world where we want to be able to. It used to be families had to feel like they hid away. People would ask me, 5 children, you have 3 with autism, but I tell them it's a different world. It's a
Mm-hmm.
different world. It used to be many years ago, when you had a child with autism or other significant disabilities, that became your world,
Mm-hmm.
and everything needed to be focused on that child. And then sometimes you would become kind of reclusive and kind of go inward. But now we have a society and a world that welcomes
Mm-hmm.
people with autism and other disabilities. We are looking at going out to sensory sensitive Santas and different types of things. And by spreading that information, we are allowing families to live their best life.
Absolutely. Um, I know that a lot of communities offer little, I don't know, carnivals and that sort of thing, where they have the firemen come out and they show their fire engines and they have their hats, and that's a good opportunity for families to go out and introduce their children with in a comfortable way with their parents, going out and introducing the firemen and a lot of times they'll let them sit in the chair and, maybe toot the horn or whatever. And it gives that child that comfort that knowing that, if they ever has to deal with a fireman in
Right.
a terrible situation,
Mhm.
that they might, be able to go over that step and be able to handle that. Same thing with somebody handles dogs and cats.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's always kind of a scary thing unless your child grows up with dogs and cats, which we had a farm and we had a child with autism, and I mean, that was their comfort. That was, the humming of the llama, uh, the I don't know what the donkey makes it, that eon. But our son was he loved the donkeys. I mean, he was really into that. And he could talk about that. He didn't really want to talk about a lot of other things, but he loved talking about his animals. He liked to talk about the llamas and that sort of thing. And so that was very good for him. And I know you do that in the community,
Mhm.
even going to the grocery store, how people do that. And one time I was with an organization, Autism Outreach Fellowship. I'll just kind of mention it, and we had a basketball team that was a very professional basketball team, and so they offered the children during the breaks that they could come down and bounce the ball and throw it in the basket and that sort of thing. And several of them wore their earpieces, and I think maybe more adults maybe need to do that too, because I think we have hard of hearing adults. And so that was really good. It's just you're telling people, don't stay home, but take your child out,
Mhm.
maybe it might be in short stints,
Right.
and get them acclimated to the world and
Mhm.
make you feel like you're also joining the world.
Yeah. Because you really want to build on those successes.
Right.
You want to, so maybe you start out with a little bit more of those supported environments.
Hmm.
So with my youngest, we started with Miracle League Baseball, fully supported
Mm.
program. And then we moved to the park board and did Spark with an inclusion specialist who acted as a coach, but was there specifically for him to help him remember, when it was halftime, which way to kick that soccer ball,
Right.
and not to tackle kids because it was soccer, not football. And now
Oh.
he is with the Bulldogs Wrestling Club,
Ah.
which is not supported in
Uh-huh.
any special way other than that wrestlers have a great deal of respect and are taught to be respectful.
Hmm.
But he has no extra supports in there and is able to be in that club.
Hmm.
He doesn't wrestle high school wrestling.
Hmm.
That's a little much for him, but then
Hmm.
he still goes with a sporting chance to do golf and
Oh,
bowling. So in those supportive environments, but then he's able to have built on those successes
mm-hmm.
and to feel comfortable to be able to go out and do some of these more inclusive things.
And that's what you're saying. We start out in small steps and get
Mhm.
them out there. And even if they have to have a trainer or an advocate with them to kind of help them and work with the team and work with the other children or the coach and that sort of thing, that is so important. And if we want great results, we need to do those tiny steps to the best of our ability.
Well, just like autism is a spectrum, on a spectrum, lots of
Mm-hmm.
different abilities. Also, progress is not static. It's going to improve and change, and sometimes we'll step back a little bit, and maybe something doesn't work once in a while, and we have to rethink it. But by keeping these experiences going and working with family and professionals, you do see that progress.
Right. One of the things I wanted to talk about was your children are getting older.
Mhm.
And a lot of our autistic parents of autistic children, they're getting older and they want to see what's available as a older uh, child of autism. What would you suggest for that? You have some suggestions what you do, or you try to get them in the workplace, different maybe ways to do that. And then also grandparents, aunt and uncles want to relate, and sometimes they are in the day to day, and sometimes they're not going to get that, like you said, we're not going to get that hug that we want, but maybe we can get the knuckle
Mhm.
touch or whatever. Tell us about that.
Well, when you're working with, as a child is progressing and getting older, anything that says transition, you want to attend. There
Wow.
is actually Thursday, if you go to Abilities First Facebook page or call Abilities First, there's information on a big transition event that talks about employment. There are wonderful higher education programs as well that are different levels of support here in Springfield and across the states and even across the world. So really looking at when you're looking at what is that progress, don't look at it. It only has to be one path.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to your child, talk with the professionals, those that work with them, and look at what are those different paths. They're not going to be limited to just 10 hours of work. Look at, and there are lots of different things you can call the Arc of the Ozarks, ask for family advocacy, and we can talk
Okay.
about some of those things. But yeah, just not feeling limited as they grow. But
No,
grandparents, we don't want to
special.
forget, they're so important. And it's so important for families to allow grandparents to be grandparents, to let them learn and make mistakes. And we hope that we want grandparents to understand that if there's a rejection of a touch or a hug, it's not a rejection of you. It can be sensory. Listen to those cues, and it might take longer for
Mhm.
that familiarity to grow, but also understanding, letting those grandparents know that maybe the one little thing that they did or that they didn't move, or the fact that that child let them throw their trash away actually was saying, I love you, you're here with me, and I trust you to help me out with this job. So it just understanding that it might look a little different
Mhm.
than a typical grandparent experience. And we don't want to forget, sometimes we have grandparents that become caregivers,
Right.
and we want them to reach out to some wonderful grandparent groups, and understanding that some of those services that maybe weren't available when you raised your first group of kids.
Mhm.
There are so many things, and reaching out, just getting on and asking around, getting on the internet or asking around, asking the pediatrician, what are some resources when we're looking at autism? Because there are so many things available now that if you are doing without, your child's doing without, or you're struggling, that just means you haven't found the right resource. And keep looking, reach out to other families. Support groups are wonderful for that,
Okay.
because parents can tell you like it is.
No. Yeah.
They don't have some of those professional barriers that we have to be careful about. They'll tell you. So find those support groups. There's always going to be local support groups, a lot of online, because those families understand the time factor.
And if they can come with a group of people, like they may know somebody else that has a special needs child,
Mhm.
they can kind of get some input. But I think, like you're saying, grandparents should not be afraid to do things. I mean, even if your grandchild doesn't connect with you just immediately, by you doing repetitious things or making cookies or baking cookies or decorating cookies. They're absorbing that. They're just not
Absolutely.
necessarily outputting it
Right.
to you.
Yeah, that receptive piece is so much greater. So what I'm understanding, what I'm getting out of my environment is so much greater than what I can express.
Right. I think we have to remember that just because you don't get that smile or, a hug, that it's there. It's going to take a little longer, and they're absorbing it. Kind of a large
Absolutely.
sponge, and then you may get a couple of drops out sometimes,
Yeah, when
early
we,
on,
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. We had moved from my child's grandparents,
Mm.
and before she had her language, after we left, she could remember what type of lemonade her grandma made and what her grandpa smelled like. She was able to
Isn't that,
tell us verbally many years later.
oh, that's something else. Well, Elizabeth, you've just been a wealth of knowledge here, and I know anybody that sees this is going to pick up, several things that, they want to be able to use or try. And I want to thank you so much for taking the extra time here, you know what that means, to be with us today. So this is Elizabeth Obrey and Pam Wining signing out with Education and Autism.